Welcome back. I hope you had a good break and feeling suitable refreshed. Next up, we are powered by a Riyadh School Group, a MISC Foundation subsidiary, exploring how we conquer the mental and emotional overwhelm that often goes hand in hand with the schools and other educational environment. Our next session is going to be about well-being. And it's going to be about Mind Matters, Schooling for Mental Wellness. Please welcome with us Dr. Manal Almakoshi.
السلام عليكم. وبس عشان أعطيكم خبر السيشن حيكون بالإنجليزي. فلو تحتاجوا الترانسليترز يكون ورا. Thank you very much. Mind Matters by Riyadh Schools Group. And I'd like to first, without wasting time, introduce our speakers, our panelists, Nojod Alharthi, Dr. John Griffin, and Ayman Allam. Allam. So as we begin, I'll give a general idea. The WHO reports that between 10 to 20% of children and adolescents experience mental health disorders globally, depression, anxiety, and behavioral disorders being the most common. And especially with COVID-19, the lingering effects, it's something of vital importance to know about mental well-being. So let's begin with our first speaker, Nojod Alharthi, who is the Director General of Riyadh Schools team. She has over 24 years experience in leadership and brings a wealth of expertise to us. Can you tell us more about the school of integrating mental health education into its curriculum?
Thank you for that introduction. First and foremost, I would like to welcome everyone with us today and everyone that is tuning in virtually. Incorporating certain topics in the curriculum is crucial. And I think when you have certain areas that you talk about in day-to-day classroom, like anxiety and stress, maybe management of certain issues, that will help the curriculum to evolve and make sure that the students have the skill sets as resilience and empathy and also stress management. All of those skills, when they are incorporated in the curriculum, and of course, it takes a lot of planning. It's not something easy. That's why most of the schools find it very hard to incorporate these skills. But after a good planning, you will find students that are more prepared for the future, and also they have the skills to do whatever they want, such as being leaders, where we all think of the Vision 2030 and how we can build students and the youth. So that is really important for the schools to incorporate.
Good, and it goes back into their skills, developing their skills. We'll move to Ayman. Allam, you come to us as a seasoned pharmacist and operations leader with over 20 years of experience in healthcare and business strategy. You also bring with you 15 years of yoga practice and teaching into this approach. So from that unique perspective, can you talk to us about what are some of the common mental health issues that we see in young people?
Well, one of the most common probably mental health issues that we all face is stress. Stress is something that we deal with in a daily basis. I mean, I cannot find anyone who is dealing with it in this industrial era that we live in. And it's something that we cannot as well completely try to erase or eliminate of our lives, as much as we want to think about how to manage that. Because don't get me wrong, stress is very, very important for our growth. And when you go even within the physical body, there are some parts of our body that they cannot grow without stress. They won't grow, like our bones, our joints, our ligaments, our fascia. it will only grow with stress. So stress is important. But on the other side, once that stress starts to completely take over our lives, it starts to manifest into disease, into illness, into tension. And without finding the way to release all that, we'll continue losing our first physical abilities, and then which will grow to our mental and well-being, which can honestly won't be restored without finding a way to release that.
Well, thank you. So that is the main point, that stress is a part of life. So we can move to Dr. John Griffin, an Irish-born academic and author with over 50 published works, including poetry, novels, and essays. He's currently the Chief Academic Officer at Premiera Education Group in Dubai. And he has decades of global teaching experience, including 12 in our country, in Saudi Arabia. Can you talk about if stress is normal, it's a part of life, and it's a part of the growth and development, is there a stigma surrounding mental health issues?
I think there definitely is a stigma attached to it. When I was working in literacy and establishing literacy programs in early childhood, one of the kind of good phrases I came across was by a group called Fantas and Penel, and they were talking about leveling students in terms of their ability. And they said that levels are tools for teachers, not labels for students. And I think that we often fall into the label trap in education, and we should avoid it. So stigmatizing is just another kind of labeling, but it's also a severe barrier in dealing with some of the issues that students might face. And I wanted to come at it from a kind of a different point of view. One of the most seminal books that influenced me as an educator was published in 2007 by a New Zealand educator named Graham Nuthall, and he talked about the hidden lives of learners. And when he was talking about the hidden lives of learners, he made a wild claim in this book that 20 to 40% of what happens in a classroom is unseen. Teachers don't see it. And that 40% of what students learn, they already know. So if there's a huge gap between what is happening in a classroom and what is observed to be happening, and you apply this to mental health issues, and particularly things like stigma, then how do we close this gap between what we can see and observe and what's going on in the mind or going on in another way, in the classroom environment, or whether it's a mental issue or something like this. So I think part of the training of teachers is a process of allowing them to observe what is hidden. And when they start observing what's hidden, I think they're empowered then to help students. And the good thing about Nuttall's book is that it's one of the first major texts in education and pedagogy to be written from the student's point of view. He did over 30 years of research to complete this book, and influenced then the whole visible learning sort of industry that was generated by another New Zealander, John Hattie. And he's talking about we need to be able to see what we're going to intervene to support and to improve. And he made a lot of influence from Nuttall's work, and I think we as educators need to sort of be aware that students have lives, mental lives, inner lives that we're not always aware of, and that when we go to observe things, we might be observing something that's very superficial and not related to their mental and mental well-being.
So we have an audience of, I think it's mixed age groups, but we have some that lived, we all lived through it, through COVID-19. So I'm going to continue with one question of asking, with the isolation that happened with COVID-19, there were many young children that missed out on crucial social interactions necessary for development, emotional and social development with those skills. How can we address that, especially as educators and for youth having a voice?
I think it's, first of all, we have to acknowledge that there was an issue. So if a child was out of school for 3 years, and if the they might have missed from kindergarten right up to grade 4. And we all know how important early childhood is in terms of play, social interaction, learning to work with others, developing listening skills, developing all of the motor skills, everything that happens. If that didn't happen in a school setting, then I don't think we can come at it as solution to that using old pre-COVID paradigms. So we have to recognize that there was a paradigm shift that was inaugurated by COVID, and then come at it from a different point of view. But what exactly are we looking for? What are the telltale signs? What do we need to address as a matter of urgency? And how do we move it along? I think that's very important.
Fantastic. Nojod, I'm actually going to continue on with this. With this challenge, how can we support students' mental health? And how can teachers play a role in recognizing and responding to challenges?
Before answering that question, I want to add what John said in terms of the pandemic. The pandemic, you have two groups of students coming out of them. Either strong, because they have learned to work independently and just seek guidance from their own. And then another group that is very fragile and very anxious and stressed. So those are the two groups. And in terms of teachers, teachers play a vital role. I always give my teachers advice to use the 3C model in mental health. Catch it, then chase it, and then change it. What those three things mean, it means the first thing that you see with the student, it's with the teachers. Often teachers are so busy doing so many things that they don't see what's behind the walls. Students could be anxious, stressed, angry, or going through so many things that they're not aware of themselves. So one of the things that the teachers should be doing after good training is indicate what are the students going through, and then find a change, find a plan to support that, either by counseling or even having a program. There's a lot of things that schools can do in terms of meeting structures. So you can have a counseling that led by the students, and then they can resolve their own issues. They can also have a buddy program where students, let's say from seniors, help students in grade 11. We all know that students in grade 11 are always under pressure because they're doing قدرات tahsili, the external exams. And one of the key things to help them is to listen to the people or the students that went through the same process. So maybe pair them up with grade 12 and get advice from them, because that's really important. The teachers, in my opinion, need a lot of training in doing so. You cannot expect someone going into a class with 1 year of experience that can really do a lot. And sometimes you have fresh graduates that indicate and can really detect every single thing with a student. But they need a lot of training, how to see if something is going wrong, what to do. Sometimes students show up in class, they're angry, they're upset, they're not wearing their uniforms, or their hygiene is not intact. They might be absent all the time, they might be late all the time. Those are all indications that something is going wrong, and this is where the teacher comes through.
Fantastic. So peer support and mentorship. John, I'm going to come to you in a second about that. But before that, Ayman, you have experience with healthcare and you're working in an institute. How can healthcare institutions collaborate with schools or educational environments or institutions to help support mental awareness and well-being?
Healthcare providers or even institutions will always provide the support needed from the schools. And I see, seconding to what Nojod was mentioning about the kind of support that should be provided by a school to the students for their well-being, for their mental health, comes also from an area where providing even counseling from the school toward the students in need. I remember one of the studies that was done in Norway. It was a very fascinating study. So they did it in few schools, and they took students with difficulties. So students who had anxiety issues, students who had ADHD, students who had traumas coming out from being refugees, students who were facing some class difficulties and depression. And they took them all through a program of providing them with yoga practice. And they started to point out what the differences that they would acquire out of that and how that would affect their all. They wanted to count and to see the quality and the value coming out of that. And they found that these students, within 8 weeks, they started to develop better sleeping patterns. They started to develop better marks in their school and better school performance. And in these schools where they provided these activities, they also found that that school had decreased the ratio of bullying. So to that extent, it went with, and it all came from the self-awareness and the confidence that they built within these students with difficulties. So going back to the same point where it's essential first to point out these challenges that we are dealing with, and then either the healthcare facilities can support once that is addressed, or even different institutions that provide such support services or support media for that, like the yoga committees or even different sport federations. That
Yoga
regard.
committees, sports. Okay. General question to the audience. How many people have ever practiced yoga? Okay, good to know. And if we brought it into the schools, would that be something exciting? So let's talk about, yoga as an example, as one of the examples. So peer support, mentorship. Nojod talked about 11th grade, about the difficulties with it. So it's not going to shift. You're going to move from high school into university, from university into work. Stress is not disappearing. So mentorship and peer support or peer communities. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think Nojod raised a very important point about the core relationship between teacher and student, what Richard Elmore called the instructional core. Everything is built around that core fundamental relationship, and everything outside it supports it. To what degree and what quality is the support provided. But I think we should try to envision another model where more power is handed to the students. Could we imagine a school where the school governance was partly supported and run by the students? And the reason I'm saying this is because it makes those invisible dynamics more transparent and more amenable. So students, let us say, involved in policy development. Students are far more familiar with the cyber culture than perhaps the teachers or someone of my generation. I don't know what kind of anxiety is created by a student being blocked on social media or being unfollowed. And if these kinds of things are significant factors in a student life, they might have insights to contribute into policy development that we might miss. Imagine students leading parent-teacher conferences, totally involved in the leading of that in schools, empowering students. Imagine students sitting on an interview panel for a new teacher coming in, where they will have most contact time with this teacher. Should they not have a say in the quality of the teacher? And we can build students in this way. We can empower them. We can train them to make informed decisions. And this kind of connects in another way with something I believe. A lot of the anxiety and a lot of the problems that students encounter in schools is driven by decisions that are out of their hands. Oftentimes decisions that don't prepare them for life or career. So we need to be involve them more in practical skills that give them the ability to balance their checkbook, or to know the right time to sow seeds and harvest them, something like this, or do some woodwork, or welding, or something like this, that culinary arts, performance arts. More programs for students to take control, because I think the old paradigm, the pre-COVID one, has left a lot of questions unanswered. And for that reason, I think we need to be connecting students more with the governance and the empowerment in schools.
And that is absolutely important. So this is youth having a part, having their voice heard. But we know that there's still going to be some resistance, maybe from the educators, from the organizations, in some cases even the families. How would you address that, Nojod, as an educator, as a leader in education?
I think when you start building initiatives in the school, and then parents and the community see the impact. So if you give students that leadership role, you will see a huge impact in their personalities and also their self-belonging. They will be really dedicated to the community. They think and feel that this is their school or this is their community, and how can I make a change? In terms of changing the mindset, it takes a lot of consistency and hard work in changing. But if you are really true in your vision and what you believe, everything is possible. I always think in doing such big shifts, you need to have a good program. So one of the programs, and everyone knows this, it's a buzzword lately, social emotional learning, this SEL. So this program provides a lot of competencies to help students develop self-awareness, self-management, also social awareness, where they know not only they can detect issues that they're going through, but also someone else. Someone could be in this room having so much anxiety and stress, and no one would even know about. So those are the kind of things that we need to raise awareness, make sure that the schools understand that and build on it. These competencies will not get any further if you don't have three fundamental things supporting it, which is the school, the teacher, and also the family. Families sometimes don't know how to deal with these anxieties and stress. And so you need to raise awareness, educate them, do a lot of workshops, involve them in their children's life. Because believe it or not, they are adults, but sometimes they need help as well.
Can you give us an example, something more pragmatic or something, an initiative that the school is working on that could perhaps be modeled in terms of involving the different stakeholders, especially families?
I think the best thing is doing a really strong meeting structure, involving teachers and students and also parents in all of the decision making in the school. If you have something that you want to do, just call them in, ask them for their opinion. If you have an issue that you're facing, involve them in, say that we're having an issue, this is what we're facing, what do you think, what are the plans? Involve as much as you can, and being very transparent really helps a lot with the parents. There's another initiative that is really strong, and I feel that everyone should do it if you're in education. Shadowing. Have students shadow a leader in the school. See on a day-to-day, let them decide. Let them take the decision with you. If you do that, believe me, it will have a huge impact, because they feel that they are so important in the school. They feel that they are a part of this decision and part of the school as well.
It's fantastic. So that was a very specific initiative. John, can you expand on that when you talked about peer communities? Something more of an example of an initiative that's taken place, especially with your experience globally.
In one school, we set up a kind of a mini United Nations. We set up a mentoring program where the older students would mentor and support the younger students, and we would have pairings, buddy system. That really helped. The students had a lot of latitude to create their own extracurricular activities. So if they wanted a debating club or a chess club, or they wanted to learn Taekwondo or Chinese, Mandarin, they could do something like that. I think it's very important that when you set up frameworks like this, you have really solid structures in place, and that you try to overcome the assumptions that might be obstacles in your way, like as we began talking about stigmas and things like that. For example, we worked in one school with students who were being transitioned. They had severe disabilities, and they were being transitioned back into the mainstream. But in some instances, we had students in the system who were undetected and having maybe slight Asperger's or autism, and the stigma that was attached to that, but the parents then on the other side were in kind of denial about it. And from their point of view, the most important thing that they wanted was the child to be integrated. So what was suggested was a practical solution, that when you're integrating a child like that, it's good to set up that buddy system and to have very practical student-led governance type frameworks in the school that can be a kind of a safety net. The other thing is reaching out to the community and knowing that there are partnerships and there's expertise out there that you can rely on. So schools not making unilateral decisions about the fate or the destiny of a student that they're not quite equipped to cater to, that they reach out and they do this. And students themselves troubleshooting and providing solutions within the school, along with the senior leadership team of the school, is a good start.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Ayman, can you speak to us a bit about, with your experience now with yoga and the group, the change that's happened, I think, in Saudi over the past 5-10 years? What have you noticed with the population of those entering physical health, but we'll speak specifically to yoga?
It's fascinating that, as you mentioned earlier about the pandemic was an outstanding opportunity, I would say, for everyone to realize how important physical and mental health are. There are people, as Nojod mentioned, who came out strong out of that, but also there are people who came to a kind of realization, completely unique realization, that I must focus on my mental health, on my physical health, which comes again by practicing, and can only be led by practicing. And where do we start practicing and living that as a habit, rather than starting that from the kids, from the students, from the schools? And everything that you do, you will become good at. Whatever you practice, you will be good at. Even the people who are practicing yoga and meditation, and a lot of people, they would say, what do you think about when you meditate? And that's the fascinating thing. The meditation is very hard because you literally think about nothing, and the mind is not trained to do that. Our mind, we don't train our mind enough to think about nothing. So whenever we try to close our eyes and go into meditation, you start to think, Ya Allah, I should have talked to that girl 10 years ago, I didn't. Or I'll probably be, when I leave here, I'm gonna go to that pizza place and have the best pizza. But your mind will always be on track, not stopping. And the best way to do that is to start getting into it by practicing. If you meditate and stay completely blank for 1 second today, it might be 2 seconds tomorrow, 3 seconds the day after, and so on, till you become one of these famous yogis. I'll just mention a little bit a story that they say about yogis. They said that there are 3 very famous yoga teachers who went into a cave. And they went to meditate. So they went into that cave and they started meditating, and they stayed for few months in silence. And then there was a noise outside the cave. and silence for another 6 months. One of them said, "Was that a goat?" And another year went in silence. And the second one said, "No, I think it was a cow. It wasn't a goat." And then went in silence for 2 years. And the third one said, if you two didn't shut up, I'm leaving." But it all starts with the practice. They weren't created this way. The kids that we think that they are out of order or that we cannot deal with them, they didn't come that way. They practiced being unaware of what they want, of what they are thinking about, of their mental health wellness. And so the best way to deal with it is to do the opposite.
I think that's something we can all kind of maybe learn from mindfulness, having it in our lives. So our time is running out. I'm going to have 1 minute for each of you to have your last words to the audience, maybe something pragmatic advice that they can learn from. And I'll start with you, John.
Yeah, I think that the fundamental truth about education is that it's about relationships. And I think the experience of COVID taught us that more than anything else. I have this idea that if a child in kindergarten sneezes, the Director General is going to catch a cold. And the interconnectedness and the relationships that are founded and created in schools, I think are the things that drive education. And when adults think of those teachers that had an impact on them in their education, they always think of the person who took an interest in you, not the person who knew a lot, who had an encyclopedic knowledge, had a lot of content knowledge, but the person who really connected with you and took an active interest in your person. I think that's what I take a lot of hope and faith from, that no matter how many things change and progress, we're always working from that fundamental core relationship building between teachers and students, leaders and teachers across the whole spectrum of schools. It's always about relationships. It's always about passing along the values of the culture, the precepts, the beliefs, the traditions of the culture. And those things can't be supplanted by AI or all of the innovative tools we have. So
Thank you very much, John. Ayman, a quick word?
Probably we should all know, including myself, that it's our responsibility to make that change within the school, within the people around us. A teacher will not make you learn. A healer will not heal you. A coach will not make you fit. A speaker who will not make you rich. At some point in life, we must come to an understanding that our life is 100% our responsibility.
So personal responsibility. Nojod, the last word to you.
Well, I had a lot to say, but running out of time, so I'll keep it short. 2 things for the youth and also for the adults. For the youth, and mostly my students that I have seen today and tuning in virtually, seek help. There's nothing wrong of seeking help and asking for advice. That's number one. You are the future of this country. You are the future.
Amen.
The whole vision is about you, and the whole vision is built around you. So seek help when you need it. And for the adults, be kind, because you never know what battle people are facing. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's an invisible battle. So before we end, I'd like to say thank you to our sign language interpreter. It's a privilege having him here, and to our panelists, John, Ayman, and Nojod. Thank you very much for your time and for your expertise.
Thank you.